crisis of confidence in U.S. elections. Take a look at what we found out. Americans who believe that the 2020 election will be open and fair, total overall only 53%.
It's remarkable that we're the only Western democracy, the only democracy of any kind that has these sort of decentralized elections, right? The election is not run through the federal government, it's run through the state governments, and in many cases, county and local governments.
Ever since the 2016 presidential elections, people have started to speak out over the problems with America's electoral system. One of the more debated topics is the existence of the Electoral College. So what exactly is the Electoral College? The Electoral College is comprised of 538 delegates. That number comes from the sum of senators and representatives in the United States Congress. These delegates are divided proportionally based on population plus 2 given to each state. So that means a state like Wyoming has 3 votes, whereas a state like California will have 55. The Electoral College is responsible for electing the president into office.
The whole number of electors appointed to vote for President of the United States is 538, of which a majority is 270. Donald Trump of New York has received for President of the United States 304.
In 2016, when Hillary Clinton lost the presidential election, despite leading Donald Trump in the popular vote, many started to question whether or not America still needs the Electoral College or not.
It is hard to argue when a candidate wins a popular vote by 2 million votes and still loses an election.
Some even argue that the proportionality of the Electoral College is flawed. The way the Electoral College of proportion can result in overrepresentation for some voters, as well as underrepresentation for others. For example, in California, one electoral vote represents about 712,000 people, whereas in a state like Wyoming, one electoral vote represents only 195,000 people.
So proportionality, right? You have 100,000 people in an urban area, and you have 100 people in Wyoming. Because of the Electoral College, these guys have pretty much the same influence. And that's the problem. 100 people should not carry the same weight for an electoral delegate as much as 100,000 people. Because on the surface, it's like, oh, they have more votes, they have more electoral, they have more sway in California, Texas, New York. But in reality, how can a Republican win office, right? How can a Republican win the presidency? Because obviously they're not going to win the New York and Cali.
Most people agree that the single biggest issue with the Electoral College is simply the way the delegates are distributed. Each state is given 2 delegates at a minimum, which the rest of the delegates are distributed proportionally based off of a state's population. It's a +2 factor that results in over and underrepresentation in some cases, which allows a president to be elected without winning the popular vote.
However, when the Founding Fathers created the Electoral College, they proportioned like this intentionally. The Founding Fathers hoped to separate the powers between the citizens, state, and federal governments, and for the election of the nation's executive, they wanted to do the exact same thing. The Electoral College serves as sort of a safety net in case the popular vote is manipulated with or elects an unfit candidate. The Electoral College gives sparsely populated states a little bit more power in deciding who the presidency goes to ensure that the needs of all states and all citizens are met by the president.
I think the Electoral College process that we have certainly made sense. I don't know that it continues to make sense now.
The Electoral College is not the only problem with America's electoral system right now. In recent years, reports of voter fraud have reached an all-time high. Many voters believe that America's electoral system is open to interference by foreign powers and is not safe anymore. All these factors have led to poor voter turnout across the nation.
Every vote matters. Voter apathy in our country on a local level and on a federal level it undermines the democratic process, and every vote counts. Here in McKinney, Texas, our voter turnout in an average election generally runs between 6 and 8 or 9%. 6 to 9% of registered voters. So that's 6 to 9 people out of 100.
I think voter turnout is really important. The more people that vote, the greater the mandate that the person who's elected in that election has to the direction that they want to go in. I know that when you have an election where there's a lower turnout, the person who gets elected sometimes isn't completely sure that they have the mandate of the citizens and they know the direction that the community that they're seeking to lead or to represent has. And so voter turnout is really important, and I think it's a statement of a healthy democracy.
The problem is right now you have a huge voter turnout problem. Texas is not a blue state or a red state or a purple state, it's a gray state.
In the state of Texas, only 46.3% of eligible voters cast a ballot in the 2018 midterm elections. Overall, nationally, voter turnout hit 50.1%.
there's no doubt in my mind that candidates for president are going to spend a ton of money trying to get people to turn out and to vote. And so I think I think you're going to see huge turnout numbers this presidential election. I think you'll probably see the highest ever voter participation. And I'm going to do everything I can to drive voter participation, get people to come out to the polls and to vote and to support our future as a country.
All things considered, we believe the next president of the United States should correct the issues with our nation's electoral system.